So I'm stuck in two worlds. One world is I'm very much my life is very much feels very blue collar. I grew up in a very blue collar family, like extraordinarily blue collar family. Like if you were to put that down, and you were to look at my family, you would say, "Oh yeah, like you're the weirdo, like I'm the weirdo." Um, and then on the other side, I live in this world of academics, and sort of researcher types and, highfalutin PhD types and, you know, um, to be honest, a lot of snobbery. Uh, and I live in these two different worlds, and the snobbery is in both sides, right? Like this is not a one-way street in any sort of way. And I live in this weird world where I am constantly balancing the two of them, and I don't think I do a particularly good balance of either of these worlds. And I often feel, I'm stuck, right? Like I don't feel like I belong in any particular domain. But here's the one thing that I've realized that there has been a lot of social change in the last little while. And I cannot help but at least blame some of it on the way that traditional academics actually works, the way that traditional sort of research actually works. And the reason is that we keep and there's these extraordinarily strong norms that if you do anything that is practical, that is ear to the ground, that you relate to normal people, um, whatever that is, you relate to normal people, that is somehow wrong, right? Like that there, there is this strong, very, very strong underlying norm that you're supposed to be in your ivory tower doing work all of the time and doing very sophisticated theoretical work all of the time. And I strongly think and what this does is it sort of populates strong norms repeatedly amongst people to say that, if you're doing anything that's practical or you're doing anything that's interacting with people, you are just being a normal human being, like living life, um, going to baseball games with your kids and coaching baseball, or going to swim meets, or spending time at the high school PTA. That any of that stuff is a waste of time. And what that does is it sort of creates this weird dichotomy, I think, because there are a lot of people that are academics. And another thing is like, you shouldn't have kids because it's goes against productivity, and there's this saying that there's no room for family, or no room for family in science. That's like real stuff that people often grapple with. Most successful people don't have kids. They don't have, a lot of family. At least that I've seen. There are exceptions, and I don't know how they do it. But there are exceptions. There's always exceptions. But the this tension of non-interacting with regular people being like kind of normal, whatever normal is, creates this belief that there's separation between these groups, or between us. And I'm going to tell you this from the get-go, like there is no like on both sides of the sort of blue collar versus the academic researcher type. Everybody's all messed up. Everybody is all messed up, and I have seen very little difference. It's the pot calling the kettle black often, right? Like there's that sort of idiom, or the saying, where essentially we're all very similar and our roles are slightly different. Um, and somehow they're being interpreted like the story that is sold is that, you know, on the intellectual elite side, that um, that the people that are doing practical stuff, right? Like this is just general the way that it's being sold in culture, right? Whoever's selling it, I'm not going to disclose or talk about that, but you know that it's being sold that, you know, the elitists sort of look down, that they're not doing anything that's worthwhile. And you know, there's truth to that. There honestly is. Whenever there is these kind of underlying things, there are is truth to that. I've done searches on, you know, the Harvard Business Review. I'm a business professor, and that's like a thing. Um, or Harvard Business Cases, and there's no cases on like hairdressers or, you know, just like regular construction people. Um, as far as I know, right, and as far as my limited ability to search. And I did not, you know, there is that's going on. There's definitely is some. On the other side, there is this belief that we're unrelatable as researchers. And I'm gonna be, I'll tell you that yes, I was not necessarily, you know, a super popular kid, or I didn't perceive myself in that way. Let's just say that. Maybe I was, I don't know. You know, in high school, I was kind of a weirder kid, I guess. Weird because I actually liked school. In the high school that I went to, that was not the norm. I actually liked studying. I liked science. You know, eventually I learned to like that. I actually didn't like, and I like science, but not as much as like math. Um, and that's always been my draw. But you know, and the curiosity of all of that, like that's been a big thing. But right, like we're creating these worlds where we're defining ourselves in such separate ways, and there's completely often very different narratives between these two particular groups. Um, you know, and I think it's our fault as academics, as researchers, of not trying to be more relatable. Um, and it's our fault on clearly on both sides, but academics have a bit of a more of a responsibility because our job is yapping. That is the job, is to yap. We're yaptologists, as my kids like to say. We just like our job is to think and talk and ponder, and we're not doing a very good job of connecting. If you were to look at, you know, for example, if you were to look at, you know, social media accounts of academics, you'll see a lot of highfalutin stuff that nobody cares about. Um, there's very little relatability for most of them. Some of them, yes, there is, but it's, you know, it's the people staying in their lane. Very little relatability. Um, you know, maybe that's changing. I don't know, but I do strongly believe that this is a bit of a problem because there's nobody, um, you know, often telling the truth, that doing the academic game is just as much as of a grind, if not more, and you have to face these weird norms. I've had to breach a lot of weird norms that I did not understand, and I continue to not understand them. But that's often the job, right? Is to understand that um, we all come from often, and it's fascinating because many of us come from very different backgrounds, and then we're sort of in this melting pot of, you know, shoulds, I guess, of that you should do this and should do that. But ultimately you'll realize like everybody is very unique, um, and they're very different, and we all have, you know, kind of curious personalities, but often you'll find a lot of genuine nice people. You'll find a lot of jerky people, um, and combined, you'll find like, hey, we're just a reflection often, right, of just normal people doing normal things. but often under some weird pressures that we have to act in a certain way, and we have to follow the sort of prestige, like just nonsense, right? What I'm getting at is I do strongly think that we have more of a responsibility to try to just be kind of there, right? Like doing things in just everyday life, and being present more so than what is led on. And I strongly believe that we should be doing everyday life things, um, and not getting caught up in the stories that are being told of what it means to be a successful academic and all that kind of stuff, because um, it propagates more of this. And I think finding less of this sort of high almighty, this is these are the answers kind of approach to being a researcher academic, um, of where all of the answers and being like, I haven't got a freaking clue. Maybe this way will work, right? Like, all of the sort of cultural changes that have been happening in the last little while. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be beneficial in the long run. I don't think so, but maybe a lot of this stuff will actually be. Well, maybe we should have been doing that all along. But what I'm getting at is we just need to live lives a little bit more, let our guard down, try not to be so serious, don't get wrapped up in all of the sort of success culture of it all. Um, One day you'll look up and you'll realize, like, actually interacting and being kind of quote unquote normal, um, that's actually the way that we should be doing things. And worrying about success, which I do a lot of, right? Like there's a lot of stress about success on this podcast. Um, that that is, I mean, that's irrelevant. Like that drives this behavior of things that we often don't want. And I'd rather be the relatable, goofy, blue collar person that doesn't know what the heck that they're doing, trying to figure this world out, for the rest of my life, than being the person that has it all figured out and doing it in a certain way and telling everybody else that this is the way you should do it. Because I just don't think that's the way life actually works. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.